Hey everyone, welcome back to Millie Chun TV. This is our second installation of Love and Relationships, and I have Ebony, the Flightline Cooks, with me, and she's back. Thank you, Ebony, for being back with us.
Thanks for
And
having me.
today we have a actual professional. We have Alice Ward. Now, Alice is also my soror, but she is definitely a professional. She knows all about this love situation and people in love and when you in therapy and everything. She is a licensed professional counselor. She's been in mental health for 15 years. She deals with faith and mental health, leadership and mental health, and Black women in mental health. She does awesome just conferences and group work. I've enjoyed group work with her, and she helps us to focus on self-awareness and self-awakening through transformational thinking, and that is so good. Hello, Shirley. So we're just going to take an hour today, and we're going to talk about relationships, love, what you should be looking out for. So we'll get started with red flags and yellow flags, right? I must say, for me, I never thought about yellow flags. I was having a conversation with someone, and she said, my boyfriend told me on the phone that there was a lady here and she was really pretty, and it bothered her. And I was like, that might be a yellow flag. Like, it's not something that happens all the time, but it's something because she mentioned it. So that would be a yellow flag, right?
It could be. Or who was a yellow flag for him or for her?
It may be for him. I mean, he mentioned it. He made that connection. So
Or maybe for her because she's insecure.
that could be a problem too. You're right. That could
Well,
be. That could
Alice,
be.
can you do this for us? Can you tell us, give like a little summary? What is a red flag?
So let's say this. I don't think that it's one size fits all or it pertains to every relationship because what may be a yellow flag in one relationship may be a red flag in another, and what may be a red flag in another may be a yellow. So I would just say probably if I could just say universally, abuse of any type is a
Right.
red flag.
Right.
Period. The
Right.
end.
Okay.
So I would say that part. So that's probably an emotional, mental, even spiritual, sexual, intellectual, any form of that is something that's a red flag. That's a hard no. I
Yes.
would say as far as that goes. Now it's a little bit different when you're talking about yellow flags because yellow flags are more due to preferences and our experiences
Okay.
we have had in other relationships or how we connect to other people. And so for the young lady who mentioned about he complimented someone, it may be a yellow flag for her, but
Right.
it may not be for him, and it may be because of her prior experiences
Right.
in relationships. So maybe someone else she was with complimented a female, and that him and that female end up having a relationship of some type. And
Right.
so that may be for her triggering to hear that. And so that would be helpful for her to process and unpack what was coming up for her when she heard him say that. Is it because he hadn't complimented her? He had
Right.
her, she looked good. He's complimenting another woman. Is it that she is not confident in who she is and that that she looks good? So part of it, I would say a lot of it would have to do with the dynamics that exist between her and the guy that she's with, and also her previous relationships, as well as other people too. Our previous relationships will be big indicators to what flags look like. You know,
Okay.
Well
I
said.
I looked at some things and I found 12 red flags.
okay.
Jealousy, refusal to compromise, lack of communication, controlling behaviors, lying, excessive criticism, codependency, lack of support, abuse, as you mentioned, unable to be flexible, not respecting boundaries, and substance abuse.
Mm.
So like I'm sure that someone has experienced one or maybe two or three things maybe in their lifetime. Um and it's your choice to go on with it and through it, correct?
Yes, and so I think it's helpful to say, just because it's a red flag, it may not necessarily mean the relationship needs to be over.
Mm-hmm.
It does mean that work needs to take place. So this is not continuing to be a red flag. Often I like to equate flags to the stoplights.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they have red, yellow, and green. You know, and so part of it is if you go through a red light, then you have the possibility of you having an accident, hurting yourself, hurting someone else, causing damage to yourself or to someone else.
Correct.
You also have a possibility of not hurting anyone at all. And people do that because they run red lights, that they do the same thing in relationships when it comes to red flags, and nothing is there to grab your attention that
right.
not okay, because red means stop. And so I think when you encounter red flags in a relationship, that's a stopping moment to look deeper into what is going on. It doesn't necessarily mean that the relationship has to be over, and maybe it does, but it's more digging deeper to see like what just happened here for this to be a red flag. What is coming up? But those are the ones that what you listed, those the 12 red flags, it has a lot to do with the other person though.
Okay. Because it's two people in a relationship.
Right. But the other person would need to go to counseling to figure out what's the reason I'm jealous. Like the young lady who mentioned the yellow flag, she really may be jealous. And so maybe that's something for her, to explore, a little bit, deeper. I'm saying maybe some codependency, exists, but the 12 flags that you listed, it doesn't mean that it has to be over, but something has to be done. Like you cannot keep going on like it did not happen. Well, I think that becomes important.
Let me ask you, when should couples seek counseling or seek therapy? Because I know for me, we never seek therapy until it's an engagement, because it's a part of getting your wedding license, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as I've gotten older, I realized that communication is so important. I'm not the best communicator until it's ready to blow up. So, like maybe we should talk to somebody within the first 6 months, within the first year, or something like that. I feel like that's a check-in. I think people need to be checking in on each other.
Right. And so to answer that question too, it's not a one size fits all, meaning it's going to depend on the two people. I will say if it's going to be serious at the moment that it's serious and we're going to move forward in whatever form, and serious doesn't necessarily mean using each other to be within at that moment, then that's when it becomes a conversation. So that could be 6 months, that could be, a year. I would normally just say if you've been dating someone for a year and you have not been to counseling, that's probably a good chance. That's probably a good time to go. Like, I don't think we should necessarily go past a year, but it's not necessarily etched in stone and say that. But I think if we're going to be together, and even let's say, for instance, if a male or a female says, hey, I want to marry you in the first 30 days.
Okay.
The next conversation I would suggest is, okay, let's look for a therapist.
Okay.
And if the person's like, nah, we ain't got to do all of that, what we doing that for? That may be a good indicator. Like, okay, well, wait a minute. We're going to spend the rest of our lives together, but we don't want to talk about what that looks like. So for some people, it may be within the first 30 days, depending on how serious it is. But I will say at some point at the course of probably within that year, I would probably say it's beneficial to go. I would normally probably suggest though at the 6 month mark, because I need to figure out what we're doing. And that's another part too, because that'll help you understand, do I want to invest another 6 months?
Right.
And then it'll also let you know how invested that person is in you, because therapy is work. And if the person's not willing to go to therapy, then how willing are they going to be to work on the relationship or the marriage?
That is so true. Ebony, do you have something to add?
I wanted to know what are the key when people are like 6 months in, right? And they're saying, okay, we're going to go to therapy and we're going to do this work. How much do people underestimate? Do people come in and kind of like play that game like that. We're going to fool the therapist. We're going to, it's not going to be so bad. We're just going to do a couple sessions, get married, and be great.
Mm-hmm.
Like how, have you run into that, those types of clients?
Oh, for sure. And every therapist is different. So not all therapists are created, equal, but just on the surface, most people come to feel you out, to see what you can handle. Sometimes clients will give you something that I call shock value to see how you're going to respond. So if they say something, then they're like, well, if she gets thrown off by that, then she really ain't going to be able to handle while we really here. So sometimes that becomes, important too. And they're trying to feel you out and you trying to, feel, them out. And so, yes, for sure, because part of the work is trust. And so even in therapy, if you're coming to therapy, if we're going to really work on your stuff, then you have to trust me to give me your stuff. And that, which is the same thing, right, that exists in relationships, especially in marriage. And so if you don't even trust me and you don't even know me, then granted, and that may be a part of it too, because if you're getting to know me, you may also be getting to know someone else in the relationship too. And oftentimes that can be helpful, because I found out persons that's coming to therapy who may struggle with communication in their relationships through therapy, by learning to work with the therapist, they in turn learn how to communicate in their relationships with other individuals. And so, so at the beginning, sometimes they don't know you. They're trying to feel you out, trying to get to know you. And one of the things that I tell all my clients, I don't want you to give me your trust. I want to earn it.
I have that down here. The number one reason couples go to therapy is trust. How do you come back from a situation where there's been, it doesn't have to be infidelity. It could just be a lie or just withholding information or anything like that. But what are some steps that people take in order to get it back on the road? Because I do know that you're going to have to forgive and forget. Or you may not forget, but you're definitely going to have to forgive, and you're going to have to move on.
So one of the things that I like to do is to go back and ask the person, when was the first time trust was broken in your life? Because most likely it wasn't with this person.
Right. Childhood.
Right. Most of the time. And so with that, and asking him or her, and how did you handle that? What was your experience like? Because sometimes growing up, especially if a parent tells a child they're going to do something and the parent doesn't, it's like, oh, I just didn't do it. Okay, whatever, move on.
Right.
But at that moment, in some ways, right? So not doing what you say you're going to do for a child, that could be a trust thing, because trust, right, I believed in you, you were going to do said thing. And so as a child, you can grow up and say, hey, people don't do what they say they're going to do. So you in turn can get in relationships that you don't expect people to do what they say they're going to do. Or you in turn don't do what you say that you're going to do. So part of this will be exploring, what that looks like, and talking through, what did the broken trust represent in your life? What did it mean, to see if a person is assigning accurate meaning to it? Because sometimes a person can be irrational on their beliefs. And sometimes it's just based off of a feeling. They don't have any facts. It's just based off of how I feel.
Right.
And so part of it will be sorting through, some of that, what is trust to them, getting them to talk about trust, because people have different definitions of trust. And some people may have a different trust for their mate than they do, let's say a sister or a brother or a co-worker or a sorority sister or, fraternity brother. Right. So that is going to be different. And so I would explore more with that person, what that looks like and how invested are they, because I do have clients that I work with that have had infidelity happen in their relationship. And one of the things that happens is called post-infidelity stress disorder.
Never heard of that.
And so it's a lot like PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So some of the same symptoms exist. And so with that being said, part of it is not something that's, if you will, in our DSM, 5, but it's something you can actually Google. It's a real thing. But part of I'm bringing that up to say the other person needs to work through the offense. If you're going to move on, when you were asking about, is it possible to move on? Yes, it is. But are you willing to work through the offense to be able to recover and repair, because some ruptures are irreparable.
Yes.
You have to determine for yourself, is this the case?
Because like you said, some people come into relationships and it has nothing to do with you, but they come into relationships because their trust has been broken elsewhere, and they come in and not even knowing, but they put that on you and they gauge you, and you don't even know you're being gauged because of the trust issues that have been broken in their situation before you even came on the scene.
For sure. Some people expect for you to let them down.
Do what?
Some people expect for you to let them down.
Yeah. Wow.
I do have a question, and that kind of goes into that. This comes up because, I don't know if you watch a dating show, Ready to Love, right? So there's a young lady on there, Aries, and I think the guy's name is Phil. I don't remember. But their initial connection was based on both of their fathers passing. Mm-hmm. Nothing really else seemed, from what I saw, that they had chemistry going on like that.
Right.
Can you speak a little bit about trauma bonding? Because a lot of people meet through these kind of traumatic experiences that link them together, and they use that as, oh, we have this in common. And it is the most traumatic experience I've ever heard in my life. And I'm like, this how y'all found love? So could you speak to some of that, connecting through trauma and how those types of how that can affect you in a relationship?
For sure. Great question. So I would say, first off, I think all of us as people have some form of trauma. So I think in some ways we will connect with people in our trauma. The difference is if our trauma takes precedent in the relationship and leads the relationship. Now, trauma bonding is when two people connect, and it can be over a shared trauma, like you were saying about the guy and the female on Ready to Love. Most of the time, people presume they are going through the same thing and dealing with it the same way I am. And that's not always the case, because everybody deals with death differently. And I can lose my father and you can lose your father, and we're going to have two different experiences, and possibly because of the relationship. You might have had a great relationship with your father. I might not have. That can affect it amongst, I think, other, pieces. But also people look for things that are comforting.
Yeah.
And we want to know we have something in common. So trauma bonding has a lot to do with what do we have in common? And that person gets me and understands me. And as people, we do want to be understood.
Right.
We do want to know that people get us, right? But the other part is three things that as people we all want, right? Well, I shouldn't say want, we need. We need connection. Yes. We need to love and to be loved. And even though we need all three, we fear all three at the same time.
Oh.
And so with that being said, so you have a need and fear working together at the same time. And so what does that look like in a relationship with each other? And so part of that is people are connecting. And so part of what you're also talking about is, how do I attach to other people? So now we're bringing in attachment styles, and all of us have one. And so when you're saying that, it's like, how do I link up? How do I latch on? How do I connect? Do I seek out people that have had traumatic experiences? Like I had, a young lady that, because I'm also a supervisor, meaning that I also supervise current licensed professional counselors coming to the profession. And she says, I love trauma. Kind of took me back a little bit because I didn't understand her frame of reference, where she was coming from. But it led me to ask her, have you had your own traumatic experiences? And she said, yeah. So it was out of her trauma that she wanted to be a therapist. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, that can be helpful in propelling you to want to help other people. But if you have not dealt with your trauma, you're going to bleed on the people you're meant to help. Ooh. So that is the thing with trauma bonding. All you're doing is exchanging blood. And that can be very dangerous, especially when you got dirty blood, involved. But the other thing is, too, I think people are just looking for some sense of you get me, you understand me, but then also people are often comfortable in chaos.
Yeah.
And so some people kind of need that, that flair, that drama, that, to make them. And so because I don't have to be committed.
Do you think people recognize that they're chaotic, they're functioning in their chaos? Like
Not at all. Because
do you think even if they don't recognize, do you think they use it as a problem in their relationship?
Well, I think some people use their trauma as a weapon.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I think some people use their trauma to manipulate.
Can you give an example
of using which one to manipulate?
Weaponizing.
Yes.
Weaponizing can be, that I was molested when I was a child, to explain your promiscuous behavior or why I do certain things or engage in certain behaviors. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people will tell you that up front to give them permission to do all this other stuff. And you're like, oh, well, yeah, he had this kind of childhood. She had that kind of childhood. So that's number one, that people can use it for that. And to manipulate would be for you not to leave them. And the other part is because, especially if they've dealt with abandonment and other people have left, you don't want to be another person to lead their life. And so trauma manipulates you into staying.
And so how do you...
Everybody leave me. Everybody left me. You gonna leave me too?
Yeah. But that also ties into attachment style. And the type is the anxious attachment. It's the fear of the person not coming back, right? So that does become important because that has a lot to do with part of how you bonded with your caregiver. And if the caregiver was inconsistent, unpredictable in your life, then that will show up in your relationships too, if you have not worked through that to realize it. So what you're talking about, right, is I thought separation anxiety only existed when you were younger with a parent and a child. But as an adult to another adult, you can have separation anxiety. The fear of being separated from that person and not being reunited, which can cause you to be clingy, appear over needy in the relationship. And for somebody else, like, hey, you're doing too much, you're asking for too much. But a lot of what you're needing is to be grounded. You're needing something to give you some sense of comfort in that space, and you might not even know that you're doing that. And some people are in denial that they have these things, going on. They think it's everybody else and not them. And so really a lot of it is looking in the mirror and really doing and asking yourself a lot of hard, questions and being honest, right? Because one of my favorite quotes by William Shakespeare is, to thine own self be true. You really can't be good for no one else if you're not good for you.
100%. 100%. So what would you say in relationships, like, starting relationships or newly engaged individuals? Like, you could date somebody for 3 years, 2 years, or whatever, you get engaged and everything, because you really don't know people, right? And what would be a healthy time, not after you get the ring, but what would be a healthy time to just start? Like when you notice something, do we just need to come straight to a therapist? And, like if it's something that you feel like you brought it up, but it was shut down, is that a moment that you need to come to therapy?
And so I have some clients, I'm actually working with the wives. And so that's been one of the things that their husband does not want to go to therapy. And so one of the ways that I've tried to help the wife is through workbooks. And so I found therapeutic workbooks, a couple workbooks. And so that's something that her and her husband can work through together to get them started, because sometimes it's about you being comfortable with sharing. And if you don't feel comfortable with sharing with your wife or your significant other or your partner, you're not going to feel comfortable sharing with me either, most likely.
Right.
However, sometimes people do feel more comfortable sharing with a stranger over someone that they know. And so that can have, its own implications. But I think part of that is sometimes people just want to start, with a workbook. Sometimes going to marriage groups at church can be a great place to start, in some form, or you just doing things, together, as a couple that challenge you going to conferences,
Right.
People that are offered, throughout, different types of churches or other types of organizations, become important too, because if they're not willing to go to those things, it's highly probable they're probably not going to be willing to go to counseling either. So sometimes, go ahead.
Because I feel like I understand what you're saying. You get workbooks and everything, but if you have somebody that like you are showing that you want to do the work, like I'm going to seek out someone to help us because I believe in us and I want to make this work and all this, and you put that work in and you find someone and they just kind of don't say anything. And then when you present it to them, like, I don't need that. What do we need that for? We can talk it out. Like, and then that person does come to therapy or come to counseling. Like, isn't that just really one-sided?
Well, so yes, but most likely before you got to that point, you already knew it was one-sided.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. You're right.
So let's just go there. And so part of it is more so trying to give someone an ultimatum. And that's not going to help a relationship.
Right.
Threatening a person, if you don't, that's not because you're not going in a form of health. And that's not a reason to say, hey, I want to work on this. It's more so if you don't do this, then this. And some people don't respond well when you do those things or you give those type of, threatening type of behavior. And for some, they actually really shut down. And so one is, so yes, if your spouse says find someone, and then I'll be willing to do it. But if you just go out on your own and say, hey, I'm going to find someone and they're going to be okay with it, well, you didn't even get no understanding from your partner before you did that. And so I think it's unfair for you to get upset because him or her don't want to go and you ain't even had a conversation, with them, about, what that actually looks like, to begin with.
Wow. Are people just happy though? Have you run into at the end of it? Are people happy at some point?
I think they can be happy in what's normal, whatever that may look like for them. Okay. And some people are happy in dysfunction because it's predictable. Oh. Some people are happy in not knowing. Some people, so it just depends on, but I think overall, just with the true sense of happiness, yes, but I think it's almost impossible to be happy with other people if you're not happy with yourself. You still got to bring it back to the person in the mirror, right? Because a lot of times in relationships, we look for someone else to make us happy. And that's the danger that people enter into because people are not going to make you happy all the time. And when that person's not making you happy, then do you determine that this relationship is not working or he ain't doing this or she not doing that because you're not happy. Because it's often said happiness is based off of happenings. And we do know relationships, no matter what type it is, it's going to go through trying times. It's just what that is. And so a lot of that's going to determine what you're made of when you go through those. But every relationship needs it to kind of see what it's actually, built on and what you're built, on, too. But often you may find, a person may actually need more help to figure that out. So I think it is important for couples to go to counseling together, but also important to go to individual counseling.
Yes.
For yourself, so you can see how are you contributing to the relationship and the things that you're bringing. The other person contributes to what he or she is doing, because the other part, when you go to marriage counseling, the couple is the client, not the wife or the husband,
right?
Not the male or the female. It's about both of you, not just one of you.
Okay.
I think that's very important to realize when you're talking about people can really be happy, or so they think, because the other part is, how do you know what happiness is? If you grew up and you saw what happiness looks like having several men, or so it appears. Happiness may be, having a different, woman every day. It'll be like, I remember growing up when I was younger, I knew this, she was a little bit older than me, and she had 7 different lip glosses. And of course, with my inquisitive self, I said, what would you need that many lip glosses for in different flavors? And she says, I have a lip gloss for every day of the week for a man every day of the week. And she said certain men like certain, like, grape and strawberry and cherry and watermelon. I said, but do you ever mix it up and put the wrong lipstick on with the wrong guy?
Oh my gosh.
And I'm saying, but people are just like that. And I was like, well, what would you need so many lipsticks for, lip glosses for? And sometimes because people are afraid of commitment. If we just gonna put it out there, some people like parallel play. Let's say that. Growing
What's
up, parallel players with children, where you can play beside, like we can have two different toys. I'm playing with my toy and you're playing with your toy. But because we're close together in proximity, it looks like we like each other and that we are getting along. But what is actually happening is I got my stuff and you got your stuff. A lot of people in relationships that look like parallel play. You over here, I'm over here, and it looks like we're getting along. But but if you try to cross over and say, "Can I share your ball?" and you ask them, "Can I share your ball?" then it's like World War III breaks out because I'm not looking to share. I don't mind you being beside me. I just don't want our worlds to intersect.
Oh, wait, that is a word. Did you get that, Ebony?
I did.
Oh my gosh. And I'm too stunned to speak.
Because it's like, what some people may say too, like, you're in a relationship, but you're still lonely. Y'all are functioning separately.
That's good.
Where everything, the routine is down pat. We know what roles we're supposed to play, but there's nothing crossing over.
We got independent play, but with the same material.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Very mutual engagement. It's not a whole lot of interacting.
Right.
People have a relationship that mimics parallel play. We beside each other, but we're not connected.
Okay, how can since we got here, because I didn't know how we got here, but I love it here.
I love it here too.
I want to follow up on this one. Okay, so we're in this parallel play, right? And I know I've experienced this as well.
Yes.
How do we get out of this? What is the first step? And I'm sure there's many, but what can be an introductory step to get out, to move towards, getting out?
To start fixing it.
Right.
Recognition. It sounds so simple, but recognizing it. Number 2 is admitting it, because most of the time, the opposite of denial is admittance. Okay. And so that is so recognizing and admitting, you know what, I recognize that I play alongside, I go along, with the person. I can admit that this is what I'm doing, and then also acknowledging why you do it.
That may be the hard part. Acknowledging why I do what I do. And
that's where therapy can come in, because some people may not know. And so therefore, that's the reason we kind of explore and look at what that actually looks like. And some people do know. And one of the reasons possibly is fear, going back to, I don't know if you're going to stay. If I share my heart with you, if I actually share my ball, how do I know you're not going to take it?
Oh, so if people, so that's kind of like Danielle said, isn't acknowledging part of admitting?
So admitting is you actually doing it to self. Acknowledging will be more so you audibly saying it to someone else. It's kind of one of those things like parallel playing adult is like you alone, but yet together. Oh. It's almost like an oxymoron.
Right.
Growing up for me, in my family system, it was a lot of people that were married, but didn't live together. Mm-hmm. So you have a lot of that dynamic that often, exists, if you will, or you may have children, that have their brothers and sisters, but they have different last names.
Yeah.
So for some people, that dynamic can be like, okay, what happened here for this to exist? And of course, it's not the child's fault, because that's a decision that adults made. But a lot of our name is connected to our identity.
Right.
So a child can grow up thinking it's not safe to be connected. So maybe the reason why a lot of adults parallel play is that they don't feel safe in connection.
Oh my gosh, I forgot my question.
Okay, so we're at admitting, acknowledging,
recognizing.
And then what's next?
So if you are a person who doesn't, like, you're aware, like you are aware of yourself, because self-awareness is really big in a relationship.
Okay.
But if you are aware of yourself and the things you do, like, how do you start fixing, like you said, like if you recognize it, like, you know what, I do that all the time, let me stop. Like, what tools can you use to stop and try to reroute yourself?
So one of the tools, this may be kind of on the deep end, but through more exposure therapy. And so, like, what do I mean by that? Is if you say, for instance, you have trouble sharing, and it's where we'll just say was with a couple, and you go out to eat. One of the ways you can start is by saying, let your significant other eat something off your plate.
Okay.
And see what happens, because some people like, I don't want nobody touching my food. I don't want nobody. And so part of it will be sharing something. So that can be a great place to start, is sharing something and identifying with the individual, what are you willing to share with the other person? It can be information. It can be a thing or a possession. It can be an experience. So part of it will be how much is okay for you to share. Like, where do you want to start? So I would actually put it back on the person and saying, like, they're like, hey, eating off my plate, that's taking it too far. But I am willing to share, a bag of Cheetos.
Right.
So I might not be willing to share. And it may be saying, or I'm willing to share, but I'm not willing to share my favorite meal yet.
Well, how long? I mean, okay. I think most of us are impatient.
Oh, for sure.
Right. So if I reach over and I try to get some off your plate and you just, give me the bad face, like, what do I do? Do I just like, like, well, is there some, like, how can you, Danielle says she needs another example. She's confused. I think what she's trying to say is, like, if you're not willing to have a conversation about your emotional situations, what is it that you are willing to share with me so we can get to that point so I can understand you better? Is that good?
Yes. And so Danielle wanted another example about what?
Like you were talking about sharing off the plate and everything like that.
Well, that may be something. So food may be a comfort for you, and that may have stemmed back from something else that happened. And so you might not be okay with someone sharing something that's that important or something that's that, close to you, but you're willing to share something else that may be less threatening. Okay. And so that's why I was saying using something, but yes, you do want to begin to talk about that emotional piece. But when you're talking to sometimes some people, they are not okay yet with going there with you. And some of that could be because they don't trust themselves with their emotions. So how in turn can I trust you with my emotions? And then the other part is people don't even know how to identify, because a lot of people are emotionally illiterate.
Oh.
So that is a big piece of emotional immaturity. It is really something that often exists in relationships. And so part of that would be, of course, that can happen through therapy, is giving the individual language to be able to use. If I was a person that you gave the ugly look to, I could say, hey, I noticed that you kind of turned your face a certain way. And so instead of accusing a person, ask a question. Tell me, what does that look mean? What bothers you about what I just, did?
Can you give us really quick, just to clarify, what is being emotionally illiterate?
Unraveling in every situation that happens, being emotionally uncontained. Everything sends you to 100. Being out of your window of tolerance, not being able to regulate your own emotions internally. So, for example, someone, and you normally respond to the same situation with the same intensity. Someone cuts you off in traffic, you go off.
Right.
You have to wait at the DMV, the same intensity. Someone doesn't deliver a package at the time that they said they was going to deliver it. Someone is late for something. Like, everything is matched with the same intensity emotionally. That can be part of being emotionally immature. or through certain behaviors. Like when something happens, not using language, I cry. I point the ball. So it can be more you're acting out, you're not using your words. That's another place that you can be emotionally immature. It's not giving language to what you're experiencing.
Okay. Okay.
Well, how do you begin that? Like, if you are a person who's not very confrontational, right? If you're just not confrontational and you can see the problem starting, like, how do you get your point across without saying, because I feel like at some point people are like, you know what, I'm good. If I can't talk to you, I'm not going to talk over you. I just want to talk or whatever. I'm not going to get loud. I don't want you to get loud. But then you're like, you know what? Just forget it. And nothing happens.
Shutting down.
Shutting down.
Shutting down.
And which is also can be, and so in two things, that can be a form of protecting yourself. But that also can be a possible part of being emotionally immature and not communicating. So part of that is determining for yourself if you're shutting down, when you're shut down in that space, having a conversation with self and saying, what made me shut down? Because we normally shut down because that's a survival mechanism. And normally you feel unsafe in that environment at that moment with the person, with the situation, with something that happened. So that's important for you to recognize what just happened here. It could be that person raised their voice, and elevating voices causes me to want to become reactionary and maybe do something to that other person. Because for me growing up in my home, my parents fought all the time. So voices makes me think something's about to happen.
Right.
And so you might not know that depending on where we are in the relationship, nor may I even thought to tell you that. But I think part of all of this goes back to boundaries.
Yes.
All of this early on in the relationship, establishing boundaries. And a boundary could be, hey, I may do things that you don't like. And I want you to talk to me about them, but this is the way that I need to be talked to. Raised voices creates this, and this in me. So I think part of that is letting, but the other person needs to say too, well, when I'm talking to you in a calm voice, you don't seem to hear. So I raise my voice to get your attention. And so the other person can say, hey, you know what? Maybe I'm not a good listener. And so maybe the reason the voices became elevated is because I was not listening, because had I listened, it might not have progressed there. But then the other person who's raising their voice can also say, hey, is it another way I can say this?
Right.
Can I communicate this to you in a way that you can receive it?
Yeah. And what does that look like? Like, how do you need to be communicated to? And that's a great question. I think in every relationship to ask the other person that you're with, how do you want me to talk to you? If something is going on and I need to address things with you, when is the better time? Maybe, of course, when I'm getting home from work, ain't the best time. On the phone may not be the best for me. I need face-to-face. Or other people might say, hey, do it through a text message. I'm saying that for some people, if that's what works for you, but deciding for yourself and your significant other, how do we want to address difficult situations? And that needs to come up early, because you're going to have difficult situations.
Right.
You're going to have situations that you're not going to get along with each other. And one of the things that I normally tell my clients that are in relationships is to determine early, when we don't like something, we need to have, if you will, a rule or something in place. 24 hours. Within 24 hours, we come back together and we talk about it. Or if you need to leave the home for whatever reason, these are places that we both agree to that's okay to go. It's not okay to go to your baby mama house. It ain't okay to go to your ex-girlfriend house. It may not be okay to go to your homeboy house. So part of that is establishing, because sometimes when we're in that space, you want to go, and so part of like, but what you doing it for? And so early on is establishing what is okay for us to do when we're upset with each other. That becomes important to it, because we're going to be, and like, hey, we're going to be upset, but you can sleep on the couch and I'm going to do whatever, but that's 24 hours. After 24 hours, we're going to talk about it. And the reason that normally becomes important, and sometimes it may be a little longer, because you don't want to let other things that didn't happen get into that space, because you can get in your head and have a whole different story about what took place. That's the reason you want to normally address it immediately, because if not, Listen, the enemy can come in, and let me tell you something. I can put a memories together in my own head, and we ain't have but one episode. And I'm just telling you, and the reality, a lot of people do that, and so that, and it also helps you get out of your head.
Yeah.
You also need to have trusted people to say, who is okay for me to talk to about this? Because not everybody, you can't tell all your homegirls. You might can't tell your mom or your daddy or your good friend or your homeboy who are okay people for you, because that's another issue. You're going out and telling this person, and I didn't want you to tell that person, right? Well, I just needed somebody to talk to, which normally happens. So establishing early, who are those people? You might say, well, no, they don't work for me. Well, okay, well, let's talk about what will work, because relationships are about compromise, too. But it is important that you assert yourself. And if you've had the conversation, you need to determine when enough is enough. If you say after 3 times, the reality is people don't not act on what they say. So then people don't take you serious. You might say, hey, I don't like when you talk to me like that.
Right.
I done told you 3 times and you ain't done nothing with it. So
I'm so glad you said that, because that can be a problem. Like if it's something that you don't like, if something you just don't like, and you have communicated that, right? Something simple, not even big, but you communicated it. But the person continues to do that, and it's like they blow up because you're aggravated because they don't listen. Like, and then there's a whole situation going on.
But that's deflection. That's trying to get the attention off you being responsible, because some people are emotionally irresponsible and you want me to work through your stuff. And so if you can deflect, if you can blow up, if you can project, then I might think, and depending on the other person, if you are a fixer, you might think it's your responsibility to do something with their emotions. One thing is for sure, no matter what another person experiences, it's your emotion. A person may have contributed to you experiencing that, but it's up to you to deal with how you feel about it. It's not up to me to work through your disappointment. Now, if you want to invite me into that space, if you want me to assist you with that, but we have to take ownership of how we feel and not keep telling people you made me feel that way, because as long as I keep telling you that, I'm not going to do anything about it. No, I am sad because this happened, and I am going to do something about my sadness. And that may be having a conversation with you about it.
Right.
I'm not looking for you to resolve my sadness for me in essence of you got to figure it out. And I think that becomes important, even as parents with little children. It is important to let them sit in their sadness.
Yeah.
You normally struggle with letting people be sad.
You really do.
You do. So when you instantly want to cheer them up, and that can be a place for that. But if you cannot sit in your own emotions, you will be easily pulled into others.
Ooh. Okay.
Well said. Well said.
Okay.
Well said.
That makes so much sense. Like for me, like I know if it's something I'm going through, I allow myself to feel it. If it's a cry, if I'm mad, if I want to be silent, I do give myself 24 hours. And then after that, I figure out how to get on through it, with it, and how to fix that so it doesn't happen again. But that did not happen. That has taken me a long time to get to.
Let me throw this in there. I think it's important because sometimes, right, we can experience rage and we don't know what to do with that. And it is important because you need to do something with it, because whatever you don't do anything with, we store energy. Energy is transferred. And so you need to be able to do something with that energy. And therefore that becomes important for you to recognize when you're experiencing certain emotions, what do you need to do to release it? Because what you don't release will most likely you will explode with. So releasing it. For some people, smash therapy is a thing. Right. So for my sister's birthday last year, we went to a smash room. Listen, bless my whole life. You get up in there and you literally just destroy it. People like, oh, that's violent or whatever. Call it what you want to. That's all right. But it was releasing, because I wouldn't want to do that to a person. So sometimes you just need to get it out. And I felt so much better. My brother felt so, like we felt so much better afterwards. Some people say they want to go to boxing. Some people say kickboxing. Some people say running. But some people say, no, it don't do nothing, because some people need to see things break. things destroyed.
A physical representation.
Mhm.
Of that leaving. And so that is okay, because I can go to the gym and I could have ran 3 miles, but I still feel this way. Now, granted, exercise can release it, but sometimes the other part is you working through it. And sometimes if you will smash therapy, I can get an image of that person, and not necessarily the person that you want to like hurt per se, but I want to release it. And then I can say, hey, you know what just happened there? You know what? I didn't like it that they castrated me in that conversation in front of their homegirl. I didn't like that they belittled me, or I didn't like it that he didn't think that I had the capabilities of making a financial decision. So sometimes it can really be those things like, hey, you know what? It's through working through that you can come and get clarity. And sometimes it can kind of clear all that other stuff up, so you can have those said, conversations that's needed. But it with any form, you need to find a way. And I would encourage people every day, find a way to release your day.
To release your what?
Your day. Whatever happened, the
Okay.
good, the bad, because emotions are not really good or bad. They're either unpleasant or pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that being said, we often think that they're good or bad. And so with that, or right or wrong, we judge our emotions.
So how do you do that when, like, I will say this for Ebony. Ebony is a mother and her children are all over the place, right?
Okay.
So as soon as she gets off work, she got to go and do this and she got to do that. So let's say at 9:00 tonight, it's just her. What can she do? Or do you ever feel like that, Ebony? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to speak for you.
For me, my kids have a hefty schedule. So in turn, I have a hefty schedule. So, working and then doing what, our content, and then my private life. Some of the things that I found that are helpful into me getting my day released is I may journal.
Okay.
I had an emotional heavy day today. So tonight I'm going to journal it out. That's one way that I release what's happening to me. And that's the way that I get out of my head, because like you mentioned, I am one of those people, honey. I can run down a narrative, baby, and I should have said this and I should have did that, when I could have just had a whole conversation and just expressed what it was that I was feeling. But one of the ways that I release from my day is that I journal. And that has been significantly helpful because I'm out of my head. Mm-hmm. And more ways than one, it gives my what I'm dreaming, what I'm thinking, it puts it to paper. It makes things more real and realistic. And sometimes when you put putting things on paper, I'm old school. I like to write. When I read, I like to feel the pages. It puts things in a more organic perspective instead of this thing I've got going on inside of my head, and it's really not anything. So one of the ways that I do release from my day is I journal.
Okay,
that's great. And even adding to that, it's an app title, and I actually came upon it because I was having a very highly emotional charged day, and at the end of that day, I stopped to reassess, hey, what happened today? Mm-hmm. And so it is important to have that time that you talk, that self-talk, to yourself, like, hey, what just happened?
Right.
I came upon this app is How We Feel.
Okay.
And on the app, you can actually set notifications where you check in, and it'll send you check in your emotion.
Okay.
You can do a video conversation, like you can literally audio, you're like, hey, I'm feeling this, this, and this, or you can type it out. It also asks you, where are you, who you're with, what you're doing, and all those things. And so it logs it in and stores it. And each state has, and one of the things that app does is that it lists the emotions under unpleasant. It's either high emotional or it's low emotionally, if you will, charge. But what it does is that it gives you a myriad of emotions. So that's a great way to begin to increase your emotional vocabulary, because when you touch on one of the shapes, it'll give you the definition of what that emotion means.
Oh, okay.
And so each emotion has its own shape. You can also, once you click it, then it'll take you to another screen. And then you can even take a picture of your face inside that shape of that emotion. Then you get to document that experience of what happened. You store it. At the end of the week and at the end of the month, it collects data for you, and it will give you an analysis of the data. Hey, you had 40% of low unpleasant emotions. You had 58% of high pleasant emotions. You had 10% of high, unpleasant. So whatever it is, but it'll give it to you all in one space. And so that's data, and it's attached to videos. There are about 2 or 3 minute videos that'll tell you about how to deal with your emotions when you're experiencing something. Don't react. Just let it go by. If you just act like it's on a big screen.
Okay.
You want to see everything, but it'll give you different examples of it. And I think that's a great way, at least it's been for me and for my clients that I've given it to, as a way for them to check in with themselves. And even if the notification hasn't gone off, sometimes like, hey, I need to put how I'm feeling right now.
What is the name of that app?
How We Feel is the name.
How We Feel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're going to continue this conversation, okay? Because this has been wonderful, and you've touched me. I've had some hallelujah moments. I mean, it's been great, but I know that your faith is large and in charge.
Mm-hmm.
So I would love. You said How We Feel. That's the name of the app, right?
Yes, How We Feel.
How We Feel. So, can you just give us a little moment of prayer, and then we're going to get out of here, and we'll be back next Monday.
All right. Father, we just come before you, pausing to say that we quiet our mind and our heart. And Lord, we've all come from different walks of life and had different experiences, Lord, even today. And Lord, I pray for each and every person that has been listening that may be in a relationship and they don't know where it's going, they don't know what it's doing, or maybe they even know, maybe someone desires to be in a relationship and they're not really sure how to start. Lord, I pray that this is something that was said or done, Lord, that will bless them, that will help them along their journey. Lord, I pray really most of all that we will just take a moment and look within ourselves, that we will get to know who we are, that we will learn to love ourselves first. And because before we can first love anyone else, we need to first love ourselves. Lord, we just thank you for the time that you've given us to be surrounded and just sharing and having this bonding experience. And we realize everybody comes from different walks of life and have different experiences that cause them to be where they are. Lord, I pray on tonight that someone will say, no more. I am going to work on me. I am going to become a better version of me. I'm going to unbecome and unlearn some of those things that are not beneficial to me anymore. I want to be a better version of myself. I want to be an example of what it looks like to be healthy, to be well, to be wise, to be all the things that you've called us to be. May we live this life as an example to other people that true happiness is available, that joy is available. We just thank you for this time. We just bless you for this time. Watch over us and keep us. And we just thank you for the opportunity to be with each other. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Alice. And we will be in touch. And we'll see if we can pick up next week.
All right.
Thank you all for being here, the chat. I'll have the links out, and I'll have some parts of this posted. And Love and Relationship will continue on next Monday. Talk to y'all later.
Bye, guys.
Bye.